Good morning, good afternoon to all of you who are with us today, whether on Zoom or watching this live on YouTube or the IFAD website. My name is Bettina Prato. I am the director of the Smallholder and Agri-SME Finance and Investment Network, SAFIN, and I am the curator of this dialogue on catalyzing finance for women food entrepreneurs. I'm very pleased to welcome you on behalf of the co-conveners of this event, who are the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, the Agripreneur, Global Agribusiness Action and Equitable Livelihoods, the International Agri-Food Network, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, Nourishing Africa, One Young World, and the Food System Summit, Gender Lever. Many of you have participated in one or more dialogues in support to the UN Food System Summit that would take place later this year. Others may be new to this, and so I'm glad that today we have here one of the key figures in this process, Dr. Martin Frick, to give us an overview of the summit and its roadmap. Over the past months, thousands of people across the world have been taking part in dialogues like this one to share their views, their aspirations, and their proposals for action to transform food systems. Dialogues are designed to allow people to express their views, including disagreements, and to generate ideas for action that can really change the game in our food systems, making them more inclusive, more sustainable, more equitable, and also better fit for purpose in general to realize the 2030 agenda. Last month, for example, I curated another dialogue with today's co-conveners on catalyzing finance for young food entrepreneurs, whose results have fed already into the summit process. Today, we're focusing on a similar theme, which is catalyzing finance for women as food entrepreneurs, but with a slightly different approach, as we very much want to continue thinking about solutions, big solutions, or solutions to big problems, game changers. But we will not do that starting from scratch. Rather, we will be looking at some proposals that have already been developed in the summit process, how they can be improved or expanded, how they can be complemented by other solutions, so that we do not reach the summit without really powerful actions and commitments to meet the financial needs and aspirations of women food entrepreneurs, many of whom are with us today. So we will address this agenda with a public segment, which will last about an hour, and then we will go into a closed segment in Zoom with working groups on specific solution areas. Let me get started then by welcoming Martin Frick, the Deputy to the UN Secretary General Special Envoy to the Food System Summit, who will give us an overview of the process to frame our conversation. Martin, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bettina. Let me start to convey my warm greetings from Agnes Kalibata, who wished to be here, but unfortunately had a conflict in the timing. So I'm happy to represent her. And also, let me thank IFAD and all the co-conveners to bringing us together. And, time is short and I will be limited to 4 minutes, but I want to say two things very quickly. One is these dialogues have already made the summit a success. We have more than 85 country-level dialogues, and each and every one of them have triggered national discussions among stakeholders who haven't spoken to each other before. That is essential because food systems are complicated. It is precisely to think outside your box, to think laterally, where you find the solutions. And in the action track process, I think what we are seeing is a massive success. We are now at around 2,000 solutions that have been submitted to us. And it's difficult to cluster them. You can cluster them on outcomes, on enablers, of which, of course, empowerment of women is one of the very, very big enablers out there. You can look at it as systems, but anyway, we slice and dice it. They have to work in more than one dimension. And for me, gender empowerment is one of the key issues that you will not only see as one dedicated area, because it would be falling short. It will be an element in all of our areas. And I'm happy that Jemima is here and she has made the point. And we take that very seriously. We are doing the clustering of the different action areas while we speak. We will be presenting next week in the Rome-based group of friends to member states how we are looking at the actions. It will never be perfect because no matter where you start, you have to put everything else into consideration. But the empowerment of women is really one of these areas where you can achieve so many different issues at the same time. I was in a previous life the climate change director of FAO, and I always argued that women empowerment is actually one of the low-hanging fruits to fight climate change. Now, why would that be? If you look at the two SOFI reports that FAO did on climate and on gender a couple of years back, you see that empowering women, for example, by giving them access to tenure in a meaningful way, will improve productivity. And it will improve productivity without any need for more inputs, which makes it a climate solution in its own right. And I think this kind of lateral thinking, bringing it in a systemic way together, is what the system wants to bring, what it should bring. And again, bringing the gender perspective in all of our most probably 15 action areas will be essential for that. Let me finish last sentence by saying we are still open for business, for new ideas, for game-changing solutions. What I have described to you is basically how we are dealing with the first wave of propositions. We will be open all of April for a second wave of propositions, but we will already start to see what's coming in additionally, whether it fits under the framework that we have defined now, or if it doesn't and there is a gap, whether we need to build an additional action area. And we're looking forward to cooperate with all of you to bring these solutions really on the ground, because they don't help on a piece of paper. They need to work with the people on the ground. And with that, back to you, Bettina. I hope I didn't exceed my speaking time. Thank you.
No, that is great and perfect timing as well, Martin. Thank you. I'd now like to turn to Her Excellence Mrs. Rachel Ruto, founder and patron of the Joyful Women organization, as well as spouse of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. I know that Her Excellency is connected live for this event today, so I just want to thank you for your support to this agenda. We will, however, now show a brief recorded message from Her Excellency. So my colleagues will now stream it. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to address you during this dialogue, which is a precursor to the upcoming Food Systems Summit. I would like to thank the conveners of this event, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, the Agripreneurship Alliance, the Global Business Alliance, the International Agri-Food Network, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, Nourishing Africa, One Young World, the FSS Gender Lever, and the Smallholder and Agri-SME Finance and Investment Network for having invited me to add my voice in this august gathering of agricultural experts. I come from a farming community and from a family of farmers, and therefore consider this as singular honor that a farmer can add her voice to a global dialogue on how to improve agricultural financing. As you all know, women account for half the world's farmers, and more so in Africa, where women are more productive in agriculture over their male counterparts. Over the years, social and economic shifts continue to place the burden of food production on women, whether rural to urban immigration or on increasing trend of women-headed households. Despite these contributions towards food systems, women face structural barriers that inhibit them from gainful and meaningful engagement in the economy. Patriarchy and its systemic marginalization of women excludes them from owning land, accessing capital, and most recently, preventing women from accessing technologies for improving their lives and livelihoods. Finance and economy are the foundations of empowerment and, in my view, a means by which women can build resilient communities for all. Women have a different worldview of society, how they harness finance and channel it for transformation and growth. Despite these insurmountable odds, women in their dailies of life maintain their dignity and nurture their vocation with tremendous impact. They also do this with joy. This is why I founded Joyful Women 12 years ago, with a view to harness these collective energies of women through table banking. Table banking, as you may know, is a model of financial inclusion that challenges the dominant banking model that does not understand women's relationship with money. It also builds on the collective intelligence of women and their stories of care and sharing of opportunities. It disrupts the logic of individual growth and emphasizes on the power of collective development. Over the years, the group has grown to over 5,000 individual groups, comprising of over 70,000 women from all parts of the Republic of Kenya. The groups on their own revolve $12 million, mostly emanating from agricultural value chains. Table banking has therefore proven that women can, when acting collectively, achieve the unimaginable. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted how we live, learn, and work. It has disproportionately affected women, disrupting agricultural value chains, increasing the burden of care, and devastating their income resiliency. COVID-19 also came at a time when the world was also experiencing other accelerations, such as the climate emergency and technology. The pandemic also, as we know, disrupted supply chains, including those in the food systems. But women farmers, whose majority are smallholder farmers, are resilient, innovating around food production and supply, ensuring the local supply chains are operational. Therefore, as the world reopens, it is my hope that we will build forward stronger with women smallholder farmers at the center. In this regard, as I close, and as we prepare for the Food Systems Summit later this year, I would like to leave you with a few thoughts, perhaps more questions than answers. How can we build forward better beyond COVID-19 and reduce artificial barriers for women to access financing for agriculture? How can we collectively unlock lucrative value chains of our government procurement and private business that can truly transform the lives of women? In this era of climate change, how can we place in the hands of women knowledge and technologies that can improve food systems within planetary boundaries? It is my hope that we can collectively work in search of a common ground of these and other fundamental questions. At Joyful Women, we firmly believe that true financial inclusion is empowering women financially without dependency on financial institutions. I hope you can join us in this journey. Thank you and wish you a fruitful deliberation.
Excellent. Thank you for these inspiring words, and I think also some specific ideas for where we may be thinking about solutions, for example, in relation to adaptation to climate change, sort of building back better after COVID-19. So great start for this session. Let me now give the floor for the final speaker in this introductory segment of the event to Marie Haga, the Associate Vice President for External Relations and Governance of IFAD, IFAD being our host today. Thank you so much, Marie, for being with us, and I look forward to listening.
Well, thank you very much, Bettina, and thank you to all the co-hosts and everyone who has joined us today. As UN Anchor Organization for Action Track 4, Advancing Equitable Livelihoods, IFAD knows how important these dialogues are, and we are indeed excited about today's discussion. So allow me only then 3 points before we get started. First, the food system is truly a big opportunity for us as a global community to commit to food systems transformation. I think we can say that the summit already has offered a great platform for awareness raising. It is helping us to show that food systems produce so much more than just food. The food system is, in addition to producing food, extremely important for livelihoods. It's all about nutrition. It's all about climate. It's all about so many things. But we want the summit to be more than awareness raising. We want to see concrete and action-oriented outcomes. We want to show the world what is the way forward to transform our food systems, to deliver more healthy food within planetary boundaries at affordable prices, also for the poor. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be absolutely clear. This transformation cannot be done without allowing women a more prominent role in driving the future food system. And that leads me to my second point. Women food entrepreneurs are confronted with unequal access to productive resources, unequal access to knowledge, technology, and finance. And this quite simply has to change. Almost a third of women's employment globally is in agriculture, but existing financial products and services are often not able to adequately serve women food entrepreneurs, hindering their potential to innovate and contribute to transforming food systems. In general, women are less likely to be entrepreneurs and face more disadvantages starting businesses. In 40% of economies, women's early stage entrepreneurial activity is half or less than half of that of men's. So giving women the same opportunities as men is important, but it's not only a question of rights and equality between men and women. It is quite simply wise economics. When more women work, economies grow. Women's economic empowerment boosts productivity. It increases economic diversification and obviously income equality, just to mention a few. It is estimated that gender gaps cost the economy some 15% of GDP. And not to forget, when you give women more opportunities, it benefits the whole family as well as what we talked about, the whole economy. So that leads me to my final quick point. Catalyzing finance for women, and particularly finance for food entrepreneurs, is one essential element in creating successful food systems. The Food System Summit will not be a success unless we come up with new, big, concrete ideas for how this can be done. And that's exactly why we are here. That's why today's conversation is important. So, Bettina, that's enough from me. Let's hear from the excellent lineup we have waiting for us. Thank you, and I look forward to a meaningful discussion today.
Thank you, Maureen. Wonderful. So yeah, a challenging agenda, but it must be done because transformation of food systems is just not possible if we do not address it successfully. So I'll now give the floor to Jemima Newkey, Dr. Jemima Newkey, who is the custodian of the gender lever for the Food System Summit and also director for Africa of IFRI, to hear about what solutions, what ideas to address this agenda has the summit process generated so far, and how good a basis do they provide to really tackle this problem substantively. So Jemima, thank you for being with us, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Bettina, for having me. Hello, everyone. So I'm leading a team of gender experts, practitioners, researchers, working with the rest of the UN Food Systems team to make sure that gender equality and women's empowerment remain central to both the propositions that are coming out of the processes, but also to the other processes of the summit. And the reason why we have this gender team is, I think other speakers before me have said, this symbiotic relationship between gender equality and women's empowerment, that we cannot transform food systems if we do not have gender equality and women's empowerment. And at the same time, we know food systems are important for the empowerment and livelihoods of women, including women entrepreneurs. So the objective of this team is really to make sure that this happens. We are using a twin track approach to do this. We've heard gender dialogues across the globe, regional gender dialogues, to also hear from women, and not just women entrepreneurs, but women farmers who are entrepreneurs in their own rights, but women's rights organizations and others that are working on these issues, as well as sitting down as an expert group to really think through what is really needed to catalyze women's empowerment in food systems. So I want to talk about two sets of propositions that have come out of the process so far. One set is very, very particular to this group and to the theme of today's conversation, catalyzing financial inclusion for women. And another set of propositions that I call sort of anchoring propositions that are really required to make sure that this happens. So three propositions that are really, really pertinent to this conversation and this group. One is a proposition that's come out through Action Track 1 on access to safe and nutritious food, on enabling innovators and of women-led enterprises for nutritious and neglected crops. This is in recognition of the role that some of these, especially indigenous crops, play in nutrition, and the fact that a lot of them are cultivated, processed by women. So this is a very specific proposition that really serves two purposes: empowering women, but also ensuring access to these what you would call super nutritious foods. The second one, which has been a cross-cutting proposition, is on closing the gender gap in financial inclusion in food systems. We know there has been a persistent $20 billion gap in financing for women's businesses globally. The gender gap has remained consistent from the early 2000s to now in terms of access to financial services for men and women. And so what we are calling for is an alliance of global and national financial institutions that implement what we are calling a gender transformative financial inclusion mechanisms. So this is not just general financial inclusion that we hope that women can access, but this is financial products that are designed with the needs, the priorities, the understanding of women's businesses in mind. So very intentional financing for women. And we are already in discussions with people, organizations like the IFAD, to start helping us to mobilize some of these financial institutions. The third one that is very specific to this group is on getting countries to actually have specific plans for women's economic empowerment, and not just small programs, but national plans and national agendas that are geared towards women's economic empowerment. And that is coming under Action Track 2 on shifting to sustainable diets. So that's the first set of propositions that have a very specific focus on women. I'm sure Bettina will talk about others that are in the list of propositions that don't necessarily target women per se, but are targeting small and medium enterprises. I want to talk about the second set of propositions because although they are not directly targeted at financial inclusion, I know they are a prerequisite for financial inclusion to happen. One is on women's voice and leadership. in food systems. So we are actually calling for a charter manifesto to make sure that all organizations, be they farmers organizations, business enterprises, food companies, that they adhere to 50-50 women's leadership in their management and in the compositions of their workforce. And this is something that's very actionable that we can actually track across the whole food system to ensure that women are actually leaders in across the whole food system. The second one is on policies. All this has to be anchored in policy. If a country does not have gender equitable, gender transformative policies, it is also likely that a lot of the programming, a lot of the investments that happen in that country also do not have an anchor in terms of gender equality and women's empowerment. So we are also calling for national food systems policies and action plans that have very clear gender transformative activities, including budget allocations to support gender transformative activities within countries. The third one I want to mention, because it's important, especially for those women entrepreneurs that are dependent on land. They are entrepreneurs who are farmers. They're entrepreneurs who need to use collateral to grow their businesses, that we are also calling for an alliance for land rights, a global alliance for land rights for women, so that women are guaranteed either through legal or customary law to inherit and to own land as individuals, not just in association to husbands or others. The two last ones that I want to mention is on integrating gender transformative approaches for equity and justice in food systems, that food systems must be just. And if food systems be just, we need to address a lot of social norms, a lot of policy bottlenecks, a lot of institutional inequalities that exist in our governance mechanisms, in the way research is done, basically in the way the food system is organized. So this is a call across board that whether you're working on value chain, you're working on entrepreneurship, it's not enough to just focus on women without making sure that these structural inequalities around norms and institutions are addressed. And the last one is on resilience, building, making sure that women have the assets and the agency to deal with the resilience to shocks. We've seen that with the pandemic. Governments have scrambled, organizations have scrambled to put together social protection and business support measures for women entrepreneurs. We want this embedded in how resilience and in how shocks, vulnerabilities are addressed, that women actually have the assets to deal with them, but also they're playing a role, leadership role in resilience programs. I'll stop there, Bettina.
Thank you, Jemima. So interesting to hear that there's actually quite a lot there already on the table, and I really look forward to hearing also later on from the group sessions, sort of, you know, what additional ideas can be brought to enrich those that are already in place. Thank you for the summary, but also very much thank you for your leadership and your commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment issues in this process as a really, really central, but often, you know, kind of second thought, you know, sort of element of the agenda. So very much grateful for this work. We're now going to a panel that will last about half hour, the last half hour of our public segment. This panel is a panel of women entrepreneurs in the food system, as well as women investors. And it's going to be moderated by Lucy Muchoki, the CEO of the Pan-African Agribusiness and Agro-Industry Consortium, who is also very much a leader on women's empowerment and gender equality as well as the agenda of entrepreneurship and particularly the agenda of agri-SMEs in Africa. So an agenda that we very much share. So I will leave it to you, Lucy, to introduce your panel and to run us through it. But let me just take this opportunity to really thank you for being a wonderful partner in this event and in this effort in general. So Lucy, you have the floor as well as your panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bettina, and Your Excellencies, all participants, all protocols observed. It's my honor to moderate this session of great women working across the continent, supporting our agenda for women participation in the finance. As we've all listened to very engaging and very important points. And I'm very glad that we even have our Excellency, Madam Vice President and our First Lady, who is doing a very good job in supporting the women. And of course, a very great intervention there from Madam Jemima. We don't have much time, and yet I know we have so much that we can talk about, how important it is to finance the women, specifically knowing that the women are not just leading the families, supporting the families, they're also supporting the governments and supporting our GDP and supporting everything else that we can think of. And we cannot just underrate how much contribution we get from our women. And here in Africa, more than 50% of our women agribusiness, of the agribusiness is the women. And we know clearly what they do. And of course, we know the challenges. And especially now when we are having this disruption for the COVID. But without wasting much time and knowing that these great women have so much to share, and yet they only have 5 minutes each to be able to share their journey. I have with me Pothida Wangatharakul, who is the CEO and CMO and CO founder at Stam Organic Company, which is based in Thailand. We also have from here, Kenya, great lady Margaret Munene, who is the managing director at Palm House Dairies Limited, which is an agro-processing company dealing with dairy agro-processing products. Then we have Agnes Daswix. She's the CEO at Small Enterprise Assistance Funds in North America. She's also doing great work there, assisting small enterprises on funds, assisting in the funds access that is in North America. Then we have Tanya Lozanki, who is a senior manager of advisory for manufacturing, agribusiness, and services sector at the International Finance Corporation in IFC. We all know how much IFC has been supporting across the world the financing of the women. So without wasting much time, I'm going to ask each of them to share with me their journey. And I'll start with our first panelist, who is Pothida. Pothida, I want to ask you the first question. And the first question is, how are you, as a woman entrepreneur, how are you finding finance access for the women in your region?
Hi, you can hear me now, right? Okay. As you can imagine, agriculture sector itself, it's really requires a lot of working capital. And that's why you barely see any small player in this agriculture sector, especially in Thailand, where agriculture has been dominated by like large corporations. So for me, the way that I work with small scale organic rice farmers, and most of them are women, it requires a lot, even more financial needs, because These farmers, the organic one, they only grow the rice once a year. And I have to put a lot of advanced cash to support those farmers to grow for me. And this, like finance include the support for training of organic farming techniques, providing them rice seeds, providing them organic fertilizers, for example. And the normal banking system in Thailand is still very traditional, so they require collateral, assets, machineries, lands, which we do not have. So it's been extremely difficult, challenging for us to scale and grow at the level that we wanted. Yeah.
Tell me, Posida, how are there specific provisions, for instance, policies, programs, financial products or other for women entrepreneurs or food entrepreneurs in Thailand? And if so, how do they work?
Okay, in Thailand, unfortunately, there's no program for women entrepreneurs that I know of. So been 10 years on this journey and never heard of one. And however, on the bright side in Thailand, as you know, like the government, Thai government, they have like support programs for food innovation and food technology related products, where government would like reimburse part of the investment in promoting those like new innovative food products. But like these kind of programs are very like competitive and they have very limited budget, so it's very extremely like hard for people to get, especially if you're small companies. Like if you're a startup, like it's quite hard for you to compete with like medium-sized company who already have sales at certain levels. If you just started, it's just extremely impossible. For my case, I work with organic rice farmers and try to solve the problem poverty in the rural areas. And this kind of thing is not qualified as innovative or anything that involves advanced technology. So we couldn't get any part of support. This is why we have been like reaching out to organizations outside Thailand, and to get partnership who can help us to scale the impact, but not think that we didn't get any support from Thai government. Yeah.
Wow. Tell me, how did you manage yourself to access the fund to start your growth for your company?
Basically, just having sales and reinvest into the company itself. We don't have any bank loans. We just have like funds from like certain grants, just a little bit from international levels, but nothing from domestic financial institutions.
Thank you. I go now to you, Margaret, here in Kenya. Margaret, you have done quite a bit, and we know the work that you're doing, working with smallholder farmers, and we're quite enthusiastic. I want to ask you a question, Margaret. Can you tell us, your company, Palm House Dairies, has been one of the significant growth from having one cow to having over 5,000 smallholder farmers, mostly women, delivering milk to a processing company. How did you find your financial strategies and sources of income, capital change along the way? And how did you succeed in meeting your financial needs for growth? Over to you, Margaret. Margaret, are you with us?
Oh, I'm so sorry, I was muted. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak in this forum. And hello, everyone. Like Lucy has said, I run a medium-sized processing company in Kenya, which we started a couple of years ago. And I myself started actually as a dairy farmer, and I started with one cow. And like she has rightfully said, currently we partner with 500 small-scale farmers, 85% of who are women, and our company has our dairy processing company has a capacity to process 10,000 liters of milk. And in many parts of the world, especially in Africa, small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of food systems. And having run my business for close to 20 years, I believe strongly that empowering agri-SMEs, especially those run by women, is a key factor or a key enabler in transforming our food systems. So how did I start myself and how have I come along the way? Like I said earlier, I started with one cow, and the main reason I kept one cow is because I needed milk for my then young family. But like humans, cows grow and breed and become many, and eventually I had many cows and I had more milk than I needed for my family. And therefore, I saw an opportunity to sell my milk and make extra money. Just to say that also my mother was a dairy farmer, and therefore I had a good example. So I started selling raw milk, you know, but later on I realized that I could actually, if I had finance, I could actually open a processing plant and therefore sell a product which was better and which was processed and could keep for longer. But finance was my key challenge. So I therefore wrote a project proposal. This I was able to do because my training is in agriculture. I have a BSc degree in agriculture. So I wrote a proposal and I went around the banks in Kenya looking for finance. But I walked along until I almost gave up because nobody was ready to give a young woman like me money to start my business. And I actually almost gave up until I heard that a bank called then the European Investment Bank was giving loans to SMEs, you know, that wanted to start and do a good business. And therefore I presented my proposal. And voila, they actually gave me the seed money to start my business. So that is how actually I was able to start my business. This loan that they gave us was had very good interest rates, very, very low interest rates. And they actually gave us a 2-year grace period for us to start. And therefore, they really made it possible for me as a woman to start my business when I had almost given up. I was able to pay off this loan within the stipulated time. And therefore I had a good credit record. And with that, I was able to move on. And soon I was able to get bank overdrafts. The local banks now could see my business and they could see my business was growing. And therefore I was able to get a bank overdraft. Apart from that, the company was making money. And therefore, I decided to plow back the profits that I was making into my company instead of diverting it elsewhere. I remember there is one time we were actually able to buy a vehicle for our sales of our products with the profits that we had made. So we plowed back a lot of what we made back into the company. Now, I said earlier that I partner with 500 small-scale farmers. 85% of them are women, and we are actually partners. They don't just give us milk. We partner with them and do a lot of stuff together that makes them better business women also. We train them. We give them feeds. We connect them to microcredit institutions where they can also get credit so that they can become better farmers and give us more milk. Now, how these farmers helped us is that in the beginning, we would pay them cash. And this is, by the way, 20 years ago. So every day we would be paying them cash. And we came together with the women and the other farmers and agreed that we could pay them on a monthly basis. And we used to pay them at the end of the month. And therefore, they kind of gave us credit for a month. So we had milk to process, which we paid at the end of the month. So this was good it was a win-win situation because when we paid them at the end of the month, then they had a lump sum. And we were also able then to sell our milk and get money to pay them at the end of the month. Of course, after that, now our business started growing, and to date, we can actually get a loan from any bank in Kenya. I mean, because now we are a big business that is running. So a lot of people came to help me as a woman to start the business, and the European Investment Bank, I can never forget. Without them, I don't think there is any way I could have started Palm House Dairies. The other thing is that I was trained, and therefore it was much easier to run my business and for my business to succeed because I was trained. I think, Lucy, let's stop there.
Thank you. That is really awesome. And yeah, just a correction. I mentioned 5,000, but 500 is quite substantial. We'll still celebrate you. 500, working with 500 smallholder is really big. I know that you're also involved in the education where you're supporting various young people. And specifically, I'm interested, and please summarize this for me because this time, I really want to know, for young women who are interested in developing their own businesses in the agri-food sector in Kenya, in your view, what do you feel? How are you supporting them? Are you working with them? And I know that you're really involved a lot in this philanthropic work. We really celebrate you, Margaret. Just summarize for me. What are you doing with these women?
Okay, Palm House Foundation is a foundation that helps finance the education of actually both boys and girls to go through secondary school. And what I see as a challenge for especially the girls to get into the agribusiness, to become entrepreneurs in agribusiness. Number one is like what I experienced myself, collateral. When you have no collateral, there is no one who is going to give you finance. These young women don't have a credit history. And it's very difficult to get finance when you don't have any credit history. There are not too many role models in Kenya in terms of agribusiness. When I decided to leave work and start a dairy processing company, I was just a farmer then. My mother actually thought I was mad, and she was like, "How can you leave formal employment to go and do the work that people in the rural areas do?" That kind of thing. So we don't have many successful women in agri business, and therefore the younger women don't really want to go into there. They only think of white collar jobs. And therefore, we need a lot of mentorship and role modeling for the young women to actually want to go into agribusiness. Of course, the other challenge. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. I know this is very interesting, and obviously, I would have liked to hear more. And we celebrate you for what you're doing, and we really appreciate that the European Investment Bank came into this and supported you when our own local banks initially were reluctant. But this is the story of the many women. I want to go over to you, Agnes. Agnes, the small CEO at the Small Enterprise Assistance Funds from all the way in North America. I want to ask you, Agnes, you have successfully invested in many parts of the world, including with a focus on gender. As an investor, do you approach women-led and men-led agri-SME differently? And if so, how?
Thank you very much. And I really, really appreciate the chance to speak on this amazing panel. So thank you very much for inviting me. SEEF has been investing in SMEs all over the world for the last 30 years. We manage over $300 million of assets, all of which are deployed to small and medium-sized businesses all over the world, including in Africa. And I will say that a lot of the entrepreneurs that we support are women. So about 3 years ago, we really started focusing on two things. One, supporting entrepreneurs that are creating resilience in their communities, resilience against stressors such as climate change, such as food insecurity and inequality. And we started focusing more on how do we, through our investment, empower women. So we launched something called the Gender Equity Scorecard, which not only do we apply to businesses that are woman-led, but also deploy across our entire portfolio. So all of our businesses have to do an assessment of how they empower women as leaders, as customers, as employees, as board members, and in their communities, and actually do better over time using some of our investments. So we're not only focusing just on women-led businesses. We feel that to actually affect systemic change, all businesses need to be better at providing equality to women and at really empowering women however they can in their communities. So our gender quality scorecard is very much more far-reaching than just women enterprises. But as you've mentioned, women do face special issues or a lot of issues that I think the two women entrepreneurs pointed to when we were hearing their remarks. And I have to say that in addition to having a very much gender-focused fund in Southeast Asia, we are deploying right now gender-focused loans that are through a delegated authority of the U.S. Development Finance Corporation. And those loans are focused on how do we help women-led and women-empowering businesses survive COVID-19 crisis. So I wanted to say a few words about that because I think women, while normally in a traditional time, have been very much disproportionately affected by lack of access to capital, this has really taken on a greater magnitude during COVID. So women traditionally are the caretakers in their homes. And now women have multiple roles. Not only do they have to run their businesses, they also have to deal with all the other crises at home that COVID may have caused. And I think this is often overlooked. So here are women who are doing really well in business, but now are suffering because, for example, their suppliers are late in paying, or they're not getting their supplies on time because the traditional supply chains have been disrupted. So they're dealing with this and they're dealing with issues at home. So I think this is a really important time to start focusing on women businesses and how we can help them. So we're deploying loans that are very patient, meaning that they have very long grace periods. And they actually are meant to help these women businesses pivot and really deal with COVID effects. For example, we are supporting a female entrepreneur that we supported with an investment earlier, but now we're hoping to support her with loans. In Tanzania, the company is called AKM Glitters, and the two products are day-old chicks and feed. And the reason we first supported her is because obviously as a woman entrepreneur in Tanzania, she had a very difficult time accessing finance, but she wanted to purchase more equipment that would allow her to really expand her feed business, because she's selling the day-old chicks through these mother units who are women in their villages that are raising these chicks to 100 days old and then selling them into the communities, but they really also needed feed. So what she did is she purchased equipment that was supposed to start running right where COVID hit. So she wasn't able to actually operationalize the feed mill because the engineers could not travel and help her operationalize that feed mill. So the feed mill was sitting there for quite a few months. And the only way that her business survived is because we gave her a working capital loan that had a long grace period that basically can allow her to continue her other activity with the chicks and with the mother units, providing other women in Tanzania with more income. And actually, she's now able to, just last week, the engineer was able to come and operationalize the feed mill so that she can start production. So I feel that, these are really overlooked issues, because when you think about it, women in food security, people would say, oh, but food is really needed even during the pandemic. But what people don't realize is that food is needed, but food also has a lot of inputs, and a lot of other businesses need constant working capital, as one of the panelists said, to survive. And two, that women are also dealing with other issues. So they have to be provided additional assistance in order to be able to continue their businesses and help their families through these crises. So I'll just leave it at that, but I feel like this is an amazing panel to really start focusing on those issues.
Thank you, Agnes. And lastly, and as I said, time really, it's a constraint. I just want to ask you one question. How do you find women-focused investments? And if so, what are their pluses and minuses? Tell us that in a minute. Yeah.
Right. So in our experience, first, I will be a little bit of a contrarian to some of the things that have been focused in the group is, I do agree that women have been very much discriminated against when it comes to capital provision. And this is across the globe. I mean, this is even true in the US. And the fact is that women own less land, they have less access to technology, and they lack credit history and required collateral. So the more traditional types of investors who are looking for those things, it's very difficult for them to access, to provide this capital to women. That's one thing. The other thing that prevents women from accessing capital is, frankly, that there are not enough women in the financial sector who are decision makers. So we really need to support the financial sector itself, the banks, the investment groups, to really hire women and empower them within their own decision-making chains, because women will likely make more investment available to women. So I think it's a kind of two-pronged approach. We really need to provide technical assistance, and I think peer-to-peer learning as well. I forgot to mention that we have the same entrepreneur in Tanzania that we're supporting with the loans is also a leader in a center that we run in Tanzania called the Center for Entrepreneurship, where she's mentoring other women. So I think peer-to-peer networks, technical assistance, and really getting the financial institutions to change the way that they provide loans, but also the way they hire and empower women within their own.
Thank you, Agnes. Thank you. And I really appreciate that component you bring in. Tanya, over to you. Tanya at IFC, and we don't have much time. We need to be closing in a few minutes. Tanya, how does IFC approach gender issues in its agribusiness-related investments?
Thanks, Lucy. And actually, I'll just pick up where Agnes left off, because we're a bit on the other side of the spectrum, right? We invest in large agribusinesses, but we do two things through the gender lens. One is we actually focus on employment, because to Agnes's point, if you have women in management, they tend to make different decisions about their customers and products, right? So you can look at the gender balance in a company from a gender lens and actually address basic productivity and sales issues. So we do that quite a bit across all sectors. But perhaps more pertinent to this panel, we think that agribusiness companies can be a huge positive force in the overall agri ecosystem, because this is the market, right? This is the market for the women farmers, like Margaret when she started out, like Pami in Thailand. They are the buyers, right, of the services. And what we have found is that we can play a role to help them push their procurement and their thinking about procurement to source from women farmers, women-led cooperatives, or women SMEs, right? And this is a huge mind shift change, but frankly, a lot of them don't have the data to even think this way, and that's what we can bring. So many of you are probably familiar with WeFi, the Women Entrepreneurship Finance Initiative, which was launched in 2017 with funding from the G20, and the World Bank manages it. But the great thing about that facility is it provides blended finance. So you have financial incentives that you can give to companies who change how they do and what they do in their procurement, right? And it also gives us resources for advisory services to help out companies achieve it. And I'll just give you one recent example. We just invested with the Suguna Group, which is a very large integrated poultry operator in India, but they do have operations in Bangladesh, in Kenya, and in Sri Lanka. And essentially, through the WeFi facility, they're getting a financial incentive to triple the number of women farmers who are supplying poultry to them, the poultry outgrowers, right? So as long as they meet these targets, they get a financial incentive to do the right thing, which is also going to be better for their business. So I think there's a lot to be done on this front, and this is where IFC has been focusing. When it comes to SMEs, Lucy, I think it's the financial institutions, and we can maybe talk more about that.
Thank you. I know there's so much we can talk. We just stress over time, but just in a few seconds, can you just tell me, what is your recommendation for the top game-changing area of action? Or how do you think you can initiate that in game-changing, how can it boost access to finance at scale for women food entrepreneurs? Just in a few seconds, kindly.
Sure, and this goes to Jemima's point and also to the chat. I think financial institutions are underestimating the opportunity they have to fund women SMEs because, as somebody mentioned, the financing credit gap for women SMEs in the world is $1.5 trillion, right? So even if the food sector captures a small part of it, it's a huge business opportunity. And IFC has so far invested almost $3 billion globally in helping financial institutions on lend to women SMEs. And we know it's a good business, right? Women tend to repay their loans better. They tend to be more loyal customers. And in fact, banks are sitting on a potential gold mine of an opportunity, but they don't think about it strategically. And this is the big change I think that we can bring, because now we have data that shows the business case. And we know that some banks who've put up their hand and say, I want to be a bank for women because we think it's a good business, they've done supremely well and they have the data to show it for it. So that's where I think we need to go.
Thank you very much. I would have wanted every one of us to tell us, but our time is over. I thank you. This is very great insight. And I know that we, the women, are geared to change this the way things are happening. And we celebrate you all. Thank you very much. Over to you, Bettina.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this really, really inspiring, but also very practical panel. I think, we really need some concrete ideas, building on what is already in place. And there's a lot in place already that needs to be leveraged and built upon to think about and design solutions for the summit. Thank you, Lucy, for your excellent moderation. I know it was a challenge to keep this in the allocated time, but I think you did a fantastic job. So with this, we close the public segment and we stop live.